Welcome back to the Leadership with a Twist podcast. As always, I'm Heather McGonigal, the host, here with my trusty sidekick and co host, Barbara Schindler.
Hi, everybody. I'm here.
And
Here I am.
today we want to talk about authority, the role of authority in business today, and how it relates to you and how you should relate to it. So let's jump right in. I think I'll start us off by saying something that we've been talking about for at least a decade, which is the old way in business was top down authority and control. And in top down authority and control environments, there's one person who sits at the helm, who's brilliant, they know all the things, and all the ideas come from them. And that's the idea of a successful business is this one brilliant person and all the ideas come from them. Now, the rate of change in business today has been such for such a long time that if this is how you operate in your business, you will experience major challenges because things are moving way too fast for anything to just be contained in one person's brain. In fact, that's why we have our business empowering leadership teams because we know it takes a team of empowered thinkers thinking about your business with you. You need empowered thinking throughout the organization so that you can notice the constant shifts and changes and decide which ones you need to respond to in real time to align to what your customers are really seeking and needing in that moment. So to really be stealth and able to pivot in today's economy, top down authority and control will not get you there. You need an empowered team.
Absolutely. It's funny, Heather, as I was getting on the podcast with you, I was saying to myself, it takes a team.
Yes.
Certain situations in my recent coaching, today's coaching, yesterday's coaching, really bring that up. And what you're saying is so true. And often one of the reasons that top-down authority, and it might not even be the intended structure of the organization, but what you might find is an insecure supervisor. And I say that usually falls into somebody overcompensating for having to prove their authority over and over again. So a misconception, really, that comes from that old paradigm of leadership that says I have to keep proving my authority. I have to show that I know more than the team, right? I need to be the expert in the room. We coached for years about this, not being the expert in the room, having a team of experts who are the authority of the role, the information, where the information's where the action is, as I often say, is really important. The situation that came up that I find interesting in that dilemma, this is actually a positive experience, but I listened to that and was like, oh, this is so helpful. A sad part of a well-tuned team, everybody's got their plates full. Everybody's got good, clear role identity in this company, but somebody had a personal tragedy. Somebody in a lead position who carries a lot in the organization, and that person is very suddenly not available.
Gotcha.
And okay, so team is stepping in, but the person I was talking to, I've talked to a couple people on that team today, but one person, her role, she's like, well, I'm not directly impacted. My role, my workload is not directly impacted, but I'm impacted because I'm being available for those who are more directly impacted. And that's when, to me, I was like, yeah, it takes a team. She didn't sit there and be like, well, my workload isn't impacted by, people having to step in to cover this other role. But she didn't stop there. And I thought that was really important to consider.
What do you mean she didn't stop there?
She could have, or in the past, without the mindset of it takes a team, say, oh, that's happening to this person and this person. They're taking on more workload. I'm not directly impacted on the flow of work from this person being covered by team right now. Instead, she said, my coworkers, my team members are being impacted. Let me see how I can adjust to possibly take something off of their plate because they're taking more on their plate. So
Right.
she didn't just go like, not impacting me. I'm just going to keep going
Gotcha.
here.
So she didn't act like she's just in her lane and what's happening in the larger team doesn't impact her. There's definitely a team culture and environment, and she is aware what else, if we're going to use a sports analogy, she was aware of what was happening on the whole court and that okay, it's impacting them. She didn't just put up walls and say it's not going to impact me over here. She's noticing, I wonder what this means or how I can support the rest of my team who's taking on extra because of this situation.
Yeah, and I know this is a little bit left field, but I'm bringing in a scenario here that happens on teams, and that with that mindset of I'm the boss, this is my part, everybody, I always have to be right or whatever, like becomes an isolating piece,
Right.
and would change that culture that this company has. This company doesn't have that culture. They definitely have roles with authority and navigating that with confidence in different ways, learning
So you're
their
sharing
ways.
this example as an example of a healthy culture, and anyone in any company could be aware that, like Barbara said, this happened because somebody had a death in the family, I believe, right? So anybody in any member of any team could have something unexpected happen. If you're in a small entrepreneurial business and the CEO is still carrying a lot and a lot of it is in their head and they're still developing the team, well, what happens if something happens to that CEO, and how do we carry the business through a tough time that may pull away our CEO unexpectedly? Right?
Yeah,
We
and
have to.
and part of that, yes, absolutely, that's what I'm talking about. And that solo, top down authority, I'm the expert in the room, that solo hero player takes away from that culture that is an essential culture in entrepreneurial businesses, where it takes a team.
Yes.
So
So so the so as we're saying, it takes a team to navigate the quickly moving, fast changing business environment today, and to build a healthy and sustainable culture that people want to be a part of. People need to be able to work in an environment. I actually was talking to a different coaching client this week who was sharing that it was very clear that the CEO didn't want anyone to take any time off. That's a big red flag and not a healthy culture, and not a culture that's going to retain the best talent, right? People might stay in a challenging economy because they need the job, but your team needs to be able to take time off and step away when they need to. They need to be able to know that if a family emergency happened, the team could cover for them just like they would cover for the team. So, for all these reasons and more, top down authority and control doesn't work, hasn't worked for a long time, and you need an empowered team to drive your business forward and respond in the moment to this rapidly changing external business environment, which has only started to change even more rapidly with the introduction of AI and all the changes that that continues to bring to our business world and our economy. So, empowered team and authority. The thing we want to talk about today is your relationship to authority. If it's not top down and authority and control, then it's empowered team, and each of us as members of the team have authority. Barbara, can you share a little bit with us about what you teach about the authority of your role?
Yeah, I was thinking as you were talking that the other piece that's really essential that we're bringing in this conversation and is important in this work field today is being authentic and true to yourself, the values you bring to your role. And so everybody has an authority of the responsibilities at whatever level of the company these responsibilities are. I could be responsible at the front desk to be receiving all the calls and responsible to direct those calls to the appropriate people within the company. And I have an authority in that role to handle that, right? And we want to be respectful of that authority that each role is designed for. It's one of the most important things in my opinion is a functional organizational structure that people are aware of, and what are the main responsibilities that each person has. That role description is essential for that person then to come in and hold some authority for the things they're responsible for.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I bring the authenticity in because what you're talking about is people have a discomfort with authority or how to express ourselves. The too nice meter comes in a lot. I need to achieve this through this team, and I ask it very nicely.
Yeah.
So I'm staying true to my authentic self because I want to be kind and caring, but that piece often trips up the fact that you have authority to to lead, to
Right.
get a certain something done.
Well, let me just clarify a few things from what you said. So, what I hear is when we teach and coach around this, when we're working with clients, what you're saying is the authority of your role gets defined by, first, I would say your job description, because every role starts with a job description when you're hired, right? They put the job description out when they're hiring you. So I would assume that no matter what the role is in whatever company, it starts with a job description and it hopefully gets anchored. You heard Barbara say she likes a functional org chart. We teach and support clients to use a functional org chart that defines that role and how it functions in the organization. And then that gives the person their authority because it defines what their role
Finds their authority.
in the organization, the purpose of it, and what they're responsible for delivering inside of the company. And when you anchor back to that, everyone who's listening hopefully can follow this, that when you anchor back to that, this gives you good, clear authority with a lot of safety because of your role, you're responsible for certain outcomes. If you're the head of customer service, you're very responsible for the customer experience. If you're the head of marketing, you have different expectations associated with you and your role and authority in a different area of the business. And this helps define the authority of your role so that when we're in a group setting, like a team meeting, and we're brainstorming different things, we can anchor back to the authority of our role for what we're going to speak to with more authority. Where are we meant to bring our expertise into the conversation? Everybody might be welcome to share in the collaborative think tank, but there are times where will want to hear more clearly from the head of marketing with some metrics, data, and their experience and insight. And there are times when we're going to be calling on the head of customer service for their insights to contribute.
And yeah, absolutely. And one scenario, kind of going back to some of the threads I'm popping in and out on, is what if you have a supervisor who is not doing that, calling on the level of authority of others because they need to be, in their opinion, they're holding a, I need to be the authority here. So I need to have the answers here. And so the coaching situation recently where this person was repeatedly getting frustrated because they'd be in a team meeting or on a Slack thing. This company actually works a lot through email, so some of this was happening in email. And it's like a couple people are on the thing, and here's Sally who has the authority to let's see. In this case, it was putting the agenda for the leadership team meeting. Okay, so that's their role. They need to have skills and knowledge on how to set up the agenda, basically the timing of the agenda. Like they're not necessarily the person who's totally making the decision on the items, but once the items are submitted and how they facilitate this meeting is their expertise, their responsibility, right? But then this authority person, when they're discussing this, continues to step in. This person would go in like, here's the draft of the agenda and into the mix, right? And this one particular supervisor would be like, blah, 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 blah. Here's how it should be. And it didn't line up with this person who actually needed to take this draft, send it out, and facilitate the meeting.
Yeah.
And right. So there's the clash there. So in the coaching, and what could she do differently to hold more authority? You need to get ahead of that other conversation.
Yeah.
Right. So she started practicing not only sending the draft, but sending her thinking with it. So now she's got her thinking on the table that this other person who needs to be the authority, right, can't step in and just say blah, blah, blah. And everybody's like, okay, let's do that. Right. Because she's now had the integrity to put something, not only the draft out, but she realized she did have a level of authority in this, even though she wasn't the person who decides the topic. Right. She decides how those topics are handled, or if there's too many topics, if something needs to be rescheduled to another time, because her authority was about how this meeting's going to go. It's a business meeting, right? The leadership meeting has to cover certain things. So she started putting her thinking in with the draft, and it worked so much better because now everybody is working with the thinking, and she felt more empowered in her role.
Yeah, that's a good example.
So anyway, that's being what we want most. I guess what I'm sharing that example for is not being trapped in like, oh, darn, I'm just stuck in this thing. It's like we always have an empowered place to step into the responsibilities of our role and demonstrate the authority we have to achieve what is expected of us in our roles.
Yeah. It made me think I have a friend group that we spend the Thanksgiving holiday together, and there's an email that goes out about from the host that's like, here's what I'm bringing, here's what we're having at the house, and then what does everybody else want to bring? And this year there was a tiny bit of a hubbub because somebody in the group then took over the email thread and said basically, I can't have dairy, I can't have this, so let's have everybody share what they're making without these ingredients, and basically tried to sort of in this way take over a dinner that
Hijack it.
and
The
it
menu.
wasn't it wasn't their dinner that they were hosting. They were a guest, right? And I remember observing that, and your story about the agenda kind of
Very similar.
reminded
Yes.
me. It was very
Mhm.
similar because it was like, wait, but this doesn't feel right. And I saw it happen. It was kind of like, well, I don't know if I would
Mhm.
do that, right? Because this isn't
Mhm.
a dinner at your house. This is not
Right.
your
You're not the
event,
host.
right? And
Yeah.
I was thinking, how would I handle this if I was the host? And before I even had time to think about that, the host reached out to all of us individually and said, don't worry, just make what you're making. I've got the situation handled. And she handled that person,
Offline.
offline, and was like, hey, this is what we have that you can eat, and you're welcome to bring additional whatever to
Right.
accommodate yourself. But we're not going to have everybody alter their recipes. We're not doing that. you know and so it's interesting, these things pop up in life or in business, and
Mhm.
it's not personal, but it happens because of different things happening, different insecurities. You mentioned insecure earlier, for when people, I think, kind of get a little squeaky, I would say, in how they use their authority, and they're maybe not using it in the right lane.
Or over responsibility is a topic that's often talked about and
Mm-hmm.
often comes from that same kind of insecurity. Like,
Yeah.
it's not so much I don't trust my team, though it looks like I don't trust my team.
But it has more to do with them trying to take care of something inside of themselves that's a little insecure.
Right.
So in my example, this person was trying to get their needs met for the holiday. And the way that they did that was to try to like go about taking control of this event. But that wasn't the best possible way
Hmm.
for the relationships and for the event itself. But I understood, you could understand what might be driving it. Now,
Hmm.
when we see those things, maybe we can have compassion. Like, it's awkward, it's difficult to be human, and that can have us be like, something else is going on there. It's not
Right.
personal to me, but how else might I be able to handle this? And then we could move forward, like in the situation that you painted the picture of, Barbara, where then the person just, well, how can you be more confident, is what I think that the coaching the person took, is like, how could you be more confident and own leading this agenda even more,
Yeah.
is share your thinking so
Fun.
that there's no gaps there, and really lead owning this agenda, and then there won't be those gaps. And
Yeah. And just that demonstrated her stepping more into her role too.
right.
Right.
And so this is that person stepping into a more secure ownership of their appropriate authority in the role. And
Hmm.
in my example, my friend chose to go individually to the people that were coming to her house and say, "Don't worry, don't change a thing. I've got it handled." And then she went and handled it, and that's the way she owned the authority of, this event is happening at my house, and this is how I'm organizing the dinner, and I'm going to take care of you, and I'm taking care of everybody else, and this is how we're handling it, right? So the last step here in talking about authority that I want to touch on is the insecure self to the secure self. And we can't change where other people are coming from, but we can notice, where am I coming from inside of myself?
Hmm.
And I want this last layer of teaching that we leave you with today to be to consider, if you are authentically anchored in your authority, the authority that your role gives you, the authority that your expertise gives you. Are you authentically anchored in your confidence that you have a right to be in this role, in this conversation, that this is your part to have a voice here? And can you check in with yourself in these moments of exchange that maybe feel a little sticky or awkward? and check in with yourself and say, what is my role here? What is my part? If I was anchored in my role and the authority and the things that I'm responsible for. And when I'm coaching people, Barbara, I often say, if your performance review were to happen tomorrow and they came to you, and I'll just use your example, and they said, well, how's it going leading the leadership meeting? I've noticed you could be more confident in bringing things forward. Would they be would they shift their behavior if they've got some feedback, they got that note like that? They probably would. But right now we're being a little more careful, a little too nice. You mentioned, Barbara, probably being on the spectrum of nice to direct. They were on the
A
little
little
too
too on
nice.
the nice
But
side.
when I've coached leaders and I've asked, but are you willing to get a negative performance review because you were too nice all year about this thing? That usually gets their attention. Do you want your future salary raises to be impacted by the fact that you're being too nice about this interaction right here? Or how do you want to stand in your career?
Right. And, on the niceness meter, real authentic authority has kindness and care built in. And
Yes.
that is a piece that can relieve that tension for somebody being like, but I've said it as nice as I can, and I said it as nice as I can. And, they need to lean into how can I do this with kindness and care, but truly have more, as you're saying, that energy of confidence. Here's what we need to achieve. This is the way that we can do this. Is there any reason why we can't make this action different? Now you're getting somebody showing up differently, because guess what? You showed up differently. And that's the same thing with the person in charge of the agenda. Start with yourself, because that snowball piece that you're talking about, like, okay, imagine at your performance review. At that point, you're going to be like, yeah, but Sally always steps in, and that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Why are you not leading the agenda? There are many approaches, and maybe your approach needs to change. And that's what we're talking today about, having the confidence to own the authority. If for any reason you're not clear of the responsibility specific, the main specific responsibilities, usually there's like 3 or 5 main responsibilities for your role. If you don't know them, that's where you start. Let's get clear on my role clarity.
Yeah, I would say that that's quite a gift. If you feel there's fuzziness,
Mm-hmm.
if you're listening to Barbara and I talk about this and you're like, well, I'm not sure if it is my lane or if it's somebody else's lane. Okay, well, that happens as a company is growing and things are shifting and changing. It's very common that it can get fuzzy. Whose lane is where? What lane, And the thing is, you want to get role clarity. You want to then press pause and say, what's my lane? What's their lane? To help me define my role and what's expected of me now at this point in time in the company clearer, because that sets me and them up for success.
Right. My best performance, their best performance. Absolutely. So I know we've
Yeah.
done a fancy conversation around authority and authenticity and being empowered for the authority of your own role connected to the responsibilities, and the clarity does create the best team. And I think, overall, we're talking about it takes a team.
Yes, it takes a team and also everyone operating from their secure self. There's a lot more to say about this, and Barbara and I will continue this conversation in upcoming episodes. If anything from this conversation sparked a question for you, please leave us that comment or question below, and we will try to answer it in an upcoming video. Until then, thank you for being here with us for this conversation. We hope it was helpful, and yeah, talk to you again soon. Bye.